So a lot of people have been asking me about the state of politics in Silicon Valley. We have some high-profile folks coming out as Trump supporters, but in my mind, a lot of the Valley is still blue, or at least still sort of Democratic ideals, and probably are going to vote for Kamala Harris. How do you see about sort of the changing landscape of the Valley leading up to November?
Well, I definitely think that, if you kind of think of it, there might have been like 3% that was pro-Trump before. It has moved. It's now like, call it 8%, right? So it's like even more than doubled from its small percentage. But a lot of those people also tend to be the very like loud, look at me kind of people. Not all of them. I mean, there's a range, but there's a set of that. And so therefore it's created what is naturally within our media ecosystem of is Silicon Valley turning red. But the information, great kind of tech publication in Silicon Valley did a kind of a thorough numbers analysis. So it was rather person X asserts that, Silicon Valley is going Trump, and person Y, Reid Hoffman, asserts that it's no, vigorously, Kamala Harris for president. And you go, well, go look at the numbers and go look at the polls versus the talking heads. And the information's poll showed substantial breadth and depth as support for Kamala Harris. Now, that being said, there are some important issues where Democrats have kind of gone somewhat wrong. They've kind of gone a little bit too much in the Elizabeth Warren, let's declare war on big tech, kind of approach. That frustrates a lot of people who are otherwise in favor of the modern kind of progressive society that aligns a lot of Silicon Valley people to some parts of the Democratic agenda. They also tend to be, kind of like, let's build entrepreneurship and business as part of how we support things. And there's, some parts of the Democratic Party that, kind of don't understand how fundamental business is to the operating of society, because it's like all of the economics, not just the jobs for everyday people, but like the taxes that fund the government all come from a healthy, functioning business. And if you have a bad theory of business and economics, exports, scale of businesses and so forth, you just think everything should be run through small shopkeepers and small business. You're like, it doesn't work that way for the greater economy. And so if you have a bad theory of economics, that's also frustrating to, kind of the Silicon Valley, kind of entrepreneurs and business people and investors and so forth who support the modern, kind of, progressive agenda for better society, better healthcare, better education. Part of what's happened, under the, Biden-Harris administration has been a general, kind of like crypto all bad versus let's shape it for what places lead to this better progressive society, and let's allow innovation to progress out that way. I think that's probably the loudest Silicon Valley group that has turned pro-Trump. And, because it most naturally aligns to the place where I substantially disagree with some of the people in Silicon Valley who was like, well, it's all about my pocketbook, and so it should be my lower taxes. That's the only thing I should be voting on. And look, taxes is an important issue relative to investment and so forth, but the really key thing for a successful business is, kind of stability, rule of law, ability to sell our products globally within the tech Silicon Valley industry. Like, one of the things that is not really appreciated is how much Silicon Valley grows towards, these scale companies where greater than 50% of the revenues are overseas. That kind of export is really critical to the healthy functioning of any economy. Like, what supports all the small businesses, like, whether they're restaurants or accounting firms, everything else, is a big influx of capital, which means you need to have an export industry that actually works. And this is an export industry that's working for the U.S. And that's part of the reason why I think it's so important to be positive on, like, one of many reasons to be positive on big tech, despite kind of a bipartisan attack on big tech.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to your point, it's clear that if you are, most people in Silicon Valley are pro-science, they're pro-skilled immigration, like there's certain things that actually just lead to this robust Silicon Valley ecosystem, and you can both be pro-big tech and having business-friendly policies, and also for not screwing over everyday Americans, but also helping small businesses and, having that be critical. And I've heard you say many times that one of the most important things for functioning business is the rule of law and making sure that we understand democracy and, the transfer of power. So are there things in the actual voting experience that you would change? Like, how can we modernize voting? Are punching ballots and scantrons the highest that we can do? Or what would you change or recommend?
Everyone naturally in the smartphone arena kind of says, hey, the voting should be a smartphone app as a way of doing this. And that would be obviously a very good place to get to. Now, one of the challenges that we have to deal with is we have to make sure that you prevent fraud in these things. And electronic gives you easier capabilities for attack and fraud. For example, I do my mail-in ballot. To be able to do that, I think is actually essentially in pro-democracy, but you have to mail it in and sign it, and it gives a paper trail and it's audit trail, and it's harder to scam with a cyber attack. So I think all of that is frankly, kind of really good to pay attention to. Now, that being said, I do think that the notion of how do we essentially informed and intelligent voting in a democracy, because it really matters. And, you could naturally say to the fact that, the principal information ecosystems that citizens navigate is a combination of, media ecosystems and political campaigning ecosystems. Both of those have various forms of bias. Now, I always find it entertaining that the most intense attacks of media bias come from the right wing, with so-called mainstream media, which doesn't mean that there's zero bias there. But then when you go over and look at, like Fox News and other kinds of things, you go, oh my God, is this like terribly slanted? A lot of shows, formerly Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, go, we act like we're news programs. Then when we're attacked for slander and misinformation, we claim we're only an entertainment show in all of our legal paper filings. Like, one of the things that I would actually really like to now have, like, across television and online media is that, you kind of have almost like a little, like, header, like, am I an entertainment show or I'm a news show? And if I'm a news show, then I agree to those things. And so if I'm claiming that I'm an entertainment show in my legal filings for not being held accountable, you just have a little barrier. Say, I'm an entertainment, not news show, because it's like, that's what it should be. And you can imagine this, kind of like, how do we upgrade the information ecosystems into helping people make a decision about, like, okay, this is entertainment stuff, this is political advertising, and this is actually, in fact, information that's holding itself accountable, including legal accountability, the way that quality news organizations actually do, which, by the way, includes some pieces of Fox News, right? Not the whole ecosystem, but like, we're holding ourselves accountable to accuracy in reporting. And then you could imagine that this would change a lot of the voting system makeover in terms of information flows and the way things could work.
And I think, you brought up people have to trust the system. And I think one interesting thing that Ben Adida at VotingWorks is doing is he's creating an open source 501c3 voting machine so that everyone can come and he can say, listen, I have no agenda. I just want to count the vote. Because one of the things that perhaps one side is trying to do is undermine the faith in our democracy. And so that's going to be one of the things that we need people to believe in it in order to sort of continue what we're doing in our country. And so if we step back from just the voting experience and think about the political system more broadly, of course, on the AI side, we have all of these AI agents, and they're helping us and they're doing customer service and businesses are employing them. Do you see ways that AI agents can be helpful in the political system and environment?
Do you say whether or not you are, this is entertainment, right? Political advertising, or this is like factual news based on we're holding ourselves accountable? And to some degree, we're going to need the same kind of thing when it comes to agents, together with some more questions around, like, okay, so like, what point of view is this agent constructed from? Because it's kind of data sources, it's human feedback learning, and so we're then, and we're going to have the same kind of political melee that we have about information sources, like is Google search biased? And so we're going to have the same issue with NAI, which is, kind of like basically, okay, so how is this agent constructed? Is the fact that it's giving us feedback in various ways, like of saying, well, like the agent criticizes Trump a lot more than it criticizes Biden, which is one of the things that was happening kind of before on this stuff. It's like, okay, what's the basis of that? Is that a systematic bias training? Is that out of data? Is that out of other things? And then how do you, how do you navigate that? And so I think that we can use AI agents to really help us have an informed political front, but we're going to have to navigate what is fundamentally very difficult issues, which we're navigating poorly right now when it comes to information and education, about what counts as kind of a credible point of view. Now, that being said, my hope is to say, well, let's agree to what a kind of a scientific level of training is, kind of just like we agree to scientific facts and panels and so forth, and why I think it's only, the science view is actually, in fact, objectively true pro-vaccine, minus, people like RFK who have worms in their brain arguing anti-vaccine. And then you go, okay, what are the values, the red versus blue statements on top of this? And then make sure that we have almost call it economist trained agent, like we are trained with this point of view, but on this, on a common basis of facts and science as a way of doing it. And then you'll have multiple agents that you'll have available to you, as an infovore, as an individual consumer of this. And then, for example, when you have platforms, you can say, okay, give me the red and blue analysis of this article, the red and blue analysis of this point of view, a red and blue analysis of what's going on in Ukraine or other places as ways of doing it. And I, maybe it's because I'm optimistic about how we can shape better future societies with technology, a lot possible. But I think those kinds of things could help a lot.
This is probably our only political episode between now and November 5th. We're sort of getting back into the more tried and true possible episodes. So is there, this is something that you are deeply working on, between now and November 5th. Is there any last thoughts about the election? Anything top of mind around voting or anything you want to share with possible listeners?
I do think part of what possible is about going forward versus going back. And the way that we create the better futures is how we shape how we go forward. And that's part of the reason why we're very technologically positive. That's part of the reason why we're very, kind of what is the new ways that we can integrate technology to what we're doing. And even when it gets to transition difficulties, whether it's in industries or jobs or, understanding of the world through information. So it's that forward looking. Now, with that basis, it's probably no surprise to our listeners that I'm very strongly in favor of Vice President Harris over former President Trump, because, I believe in the stability of the rule of law. I believe in the importance of truth-telling and accuracy. I mean, literally, kind of when you looked at, President Trump's, debate performance, it was entirely a bunch of lies and slander. And the important thing about building the future is to be truth-telling. And by the way, of course, people say, hey, politicians shade, that happens. Marketing shades, that happens. But it's a, massive difference between the two. And, Vice President Harris has actually, in fact, grown up with we understand kind of technological innovation is what helped create our future. And so she's actually closer to that. And so, for all of these reasons and many more, I'm obviously hopeful and very positive on Harris, and will be articulating that view very consistently and very positively for pro-business, pro-technology, and pro-innovation reasons.
Fantastic. And I'll just end with something that you told me, which I thought was so prescient. It's, imagine if it's November 6th and the candidate that you wanted loses. What do you wish you had done? Do you wish you had, given $100 more? Do you wish you had volunteered in a swing state for another few hours? Do you wish you had called that friend? So anything that post-election you wish you would have done, the time is now. So, don't wait and just go out there and do it. Reid, thank you so much.
Aria, as always, a pleasure.
Possible is produced by Wonder Media Network. It's hosted by Aria Finger and me, Reid Hoffman. Our showrunner is Sean Young. Possible is produced by Katie Sanders, Edie Allard, Sarah Schleid, Adrian Bain, and Paloma Moreno Jimenez. Jenny Kaplan is our executive producer and editor.
Special thanks to Surya Yalamanchili, Saida Sepieva, Ian Ellis, Greg Beato, Ben Rellis, Parth Patil, and Little Monster Media Company.